Hey guys, this is Nick Chrysalis from Mob Tales. Hope you guys are doing well. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Last time we got a part two of interview that we had with Matt about the about his book and also which runs along the lines of the Carmen Galante hit and some information that a lot of people didn't know about certain individuals that were part of the hit. And we're going to discuss a little bit further from the last time that we spoke and dig maybe a little bit deeper into it. So thanks you guys for checking in. Please like, subscribe, share, and all that fun stuff, and leave any comments. And Matt, thanks a lot for coming on the show for part two.
My pleasure, Nick. Pleasure to see you again. And as we were talking right before we came on, the crazy thing is today is July 12th. We did not set this up on purpose, complete coincidence, but it's 47 years ago to the day that this happened, I believe, at 2:43 p.m. So that's insane coincidence.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I didn't realize it till you mentioned it. I'm like, oh shoot, that's right. That's pretty freaking crazy. Not for nothing.
That is crazy.
So maybe look, hey, maybe it's meant to be that we have the show today. So that's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So um, I wanted to discuss some things with you in reference to that day and for the individuals involved. And I want to go into further detail about the fireworks that you guys were selling and how that came about, how it began, and all that kind of stuff. The first thing I want to mention is what we talked about last time. We mentioned about Baldo Amato and Cesar Badalamenti that were there when the hit went down. Um, but they didn't take part, they didn't personally take part in the hit, even though there are theories that they had something to do with it, meaning not the actual shooters, but they were somewhat involved with how it was all set up via Joe Messino. So I wanted to get your input about that.
Well, a couple of things right away. I got to tell you, 100% they win on the hit. I mean, from top to bottom, starting with the fact that those are the two guys who were bringing the guns to my friends to do the hit. They actually got locked up a few weeks before the hit out in Nassau County, where we are. They were going to one of the fireworks locations to give our friends the guns. And I know a lot of people do call him Caesar. I just want to say one thing. Baldo and the other Sicilian guys, they always called him Cesare instead of Caesar. I know that everyone calls him Caesar, but I just want to say that on the record. You know, when I was around those guys, they always called him Cesare. But here's another crazy point about that. After they get locked up for a gun collar in Nassau County, Cesare showed up a few days after that to a bar in Syosset. Hard to believe. Upper Deck was the name of the place on Jackson Avenue. And he just brings my friend another batch of guns. And my friend's like, are you freaking nuts, man? You just took a gun collar a few days ago. You get two in a row like this, they could throw the key away on you. And he thought my friend was nuts, my friend Tommy. He's like, what are you talking about? You're my friends. I told you I was going to get you the guns. You think I'm going to let a collar stop me? The guys had no fear whatsoever. But yes, they were 100% in on it. They were in on the planning phase. Again, the lawyers want me to make it clear. I did not know this was going down beforehand. I had nothing to do with the planning phase. I wasn't there when it went down. Two of our friends that have passed away gave me every single detail on the deathbed. One was about 3 or 4 years ago. One was maybe 6 or 7 years ago when these guys passed. And they gave every single detail what happened. Baldo and Cesare, they were the bodyguards for Galante. They had
Right.
moved up in rank and they were really watching him frequently. And they had thrown our guys a bunch of locations. And I'll tell you what some of these were where this hit could have gone down. Two of them were in Nassau County. I believe one was Glen Cove. One was going to be Garden City. That's where his daughter or somebody lived, that he frequented that house. Another one was going to be an Italian restaurant over in Whitestone. We detail all of this in the book, Made on Long Island. I can't remember all the names of these places. And another one was out in Brooklyn, besides Joe and Mary's. They quickly looked at these places and got rid of them for a lot of reasons. Number one, most of them, there was nowhere to go. It's not urban. If you do something like this in Nassau County, you there's no chop shops where you can go and drop the cars off and get them chopped. They needed to do it in a place where they can get the cars to a chop shop right away. So that narrowed it down to the two in Brooklyn. The one in Whitestone, they were fooling around with a chop shop or something in Willits Point, but that didn't pan out. Here's the key. Everything came together when other guys from the fireworks business who were hanging out with some of the cops in the 8-3 realized, hey, these guys have already told us they have one of them at least had a big vendetta against Galante. And these guys were hanging out with our friends, and everything came together. They're like, look, we have cops in the 8-3 that are going to help us, and they did. We have Baldo and Chessery. Let's do it, and it has to be done in Joe and Mary's. The most interesting point, though, is on July 12th, which obviously is today, and this was July 12th over in 79. That was not supposed to be a hit day. That was supposed to be a dry run. And when our friend Tommy saw every piece was in place, and some of our guys that were, again, these guys were older than me, they would be heading off to college, in a couple of weeks. And he saw it that way. He changed the game plan, and he changed it to a live hit versus a dry run. Now, everybody on the outside knew it, but you talked about Baldo and Chessery. They did not know it. They thought it was still going to be a dry run. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. Our guys came in there wearing Baltimore Orioles baseball hats, facing forward. If Baldo and Chessery saw something in there that they didn't like, be it undercover cops, more made men than the 2 or 3 that were in there, they were to tell our guys, it's takeout only. Do not come in here today. Take the food out. Our guys interpret that as the place is dirty, get out. But they didn't. They gave them the go-ahead sign. Our guys took their baseball hats and flipped them around like a catcher wears them. Now, when our guys walked outside with the baseball hats like that, everybody on the outside knew this was going down. You had a lot of cars there. I'll tell you what the cars were. You had a command car that Tommy detailed for me was over on Troutman. You had a car with the shooters. You had a car across the street on Knickerbocker with 2 other backup shooters. And you had a crash car in back of them, which was 100% clean. If something went down, that crash car guy was going to drive interference, crash into anybody that was following if it was law enforcement. And he could just say, look, I've done nothing wrong. My car's clean. I don't have any guns. I'm a passerby. That's how a crash car had to be clean, not stolen or anything. All the other cars were stolen at the time. But that's how elaborate it was. And also when the cops, and I could talk about how they changed position on the street, they actually held the parking spaces for our friends when they showed up. And what happened was when they saw these guys go out with baseball hats on backwards, they left. They knew right away the hit was going down. Back to Baldo and Chessery. You had a witness at the scene who fingered Baldo. It was Toronto's daughter. She said Baldo was inside the place with the gun out when the hit went down. Now, if that was true and investigators believed it to be true, obviously he's getting indicted. That's an easy indictment, and he's probably getting convicted. That never happened. Baldo and Chessery were questioned and let go with nothing, no charges. And I'm going to tell you why that was, in my opinion, and I think it's a pretty damn strong opinion. You have a witness saying he was in there with a gun. However, I believe you had either human intelligence outside or a camera outside, just like you had at the Ravenite. And that camera or that human intelligence saw Baldo and Chessery head northbound on Knickerbocker. That was the planning phase, and they did it to a T. These guys held northbound on Knickerbocker, probably 40, 50 feet up the street. Boom, boom, boom. That's when the shots went off. So obviously the camera or the human intelligence outside, who knows, an FBI van, whatever, confirmed right away Baldo and Chessery had nothing to do with the actual hit. Toronto's daughter, here's our theory on her. She lost her dad. Her brother got shot by one of our guys, Bubbles. He was running for a gun. She was in a state of chaos. I think she probably realized that Baldo and Chessery had let them all down, and she wanted to strike back at them. Because if her statement to the cop was anything close to reality and it couldn't be disproved, of course Baldo and Chessery are getting locked up, and they never did.
Wow. Okay. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, again, I think I might have asked you this last time. I don't quite remember, but it's interesting that you're revealing all this information now. Many, like you said, whatever it is, 47 years later. Um, it is by putting this information out there. I'm assuming, from what I understand, you're trying to, I believe, help or exonerate Bruno Indelicato, for being that he was supposedly involved with the hit, and that's what I'm gathering. Um, I spoke to one or two people that saw the show, and that's what they were telling me. And they were asking me, why would this guy Matt want to help Bruno at all? What is the value here? And I couldn't answer that, obviously. So I wanted to see what your input would be.
That is a great point, and there's a lot of points going on here. When my first friend Tommy told me about all the details that went down, he flat out said, "We have to let people know about this. This is the craziest story ever in the history of Cosa Nostra." Myself and Bart, we interviewed him many times, took a lot of notebooks, wrote everything down, couldn't believe it, were shocked. He passed away. 2 or 3 years later, one of the last guys still alive passed away. Now, that particular guy, we name him in the book. He goes, "I want my name out. I want people to know that I participated in it." And he wanted us to use his name, and we did. So I had a couple of things going on. I wanted to honor my friend's requests, which has been done. That's already been done. And yes, they felt sick that Bruno got set up for this. Now, there's a distinction here. Do we believe that Bruno Indelicato was guilty of conspiring to kill Galante? Absolutely yes. We believe him, with a team led by his father, Sonny Red, had 100% conspired to kill Galante in conjunction with a Gambino team led by John Gotti. But the fact is, he did not do it. And again, there's no motivation. He's on the streets. It's not like we're trying to spring him from jail. There's no motivation for that other than the fact that the history must be set true of what happened. And people need to know, just like they did in some of the other outstanding things that are out there, like mob cops, that what you see and what you get from law enforcement and prosecutors is not always the truth. There's a lot of bad ones out there. At least there was back then. People need to know that. Bruno Indelicato was 100% set up in that. And the FBI's own people, as we mentioned last time, down the hallway, in the other case, in the Pizza Connection case, they could not even say what their other team was saying, that Bruno Indelicato did it. They did not want to take a perjury rap. So they simply said, at this time, which was 1986, all we know is 3 unknown males killed Carmine Galante. They couldn't even do it. They didn't want the perjury rap.
Wow. Okay. Now I'm sure you have seen the movie Donnie Brasco.
Absolutely.
Now you see Sonny Red in it, even though most of the movie's not accurate, but nevertheless, I say that because the character that James Russo played, which was named Paulie in the movie, is incorrect. The guy he was really playing was John Booby Sorsani, and John Booby was a friend of mine, and Booby, me and him talked one time at a cafe, and it's funny because he sued the filmmakers of Donnie Brasco for what's the word I'm looking for here? Uh, Defamation of character. Because in the film, it shows Sonny Black, Nicky Santora, Lefty Ruggiero, and Donnie Brasco, of course, and Booby Sorsani, which was Paulie in the movie, whacked the 3 captains. Which that didn't. None of those guys were involved in it.
Totally false.
Joe Messina was involved in it. Georgie Canada, Vito Rizzuto, and I think even Cesar and Baldo had something to do with it. But those other guys had nothing to do with it. So Booby actually sued the defamation of character for putting him at a murder scene, and which he was never there. Excellent. Now, the movie shows, it represents Bruno Indelicato in the movie with his father. First, you see him in the beginning of the movie where he's walking at the club, and he tries to get wise with Lefty. And then later on, when they try to kill him on his boat, um, so yeah, that is true that they were trying to kill him. That it was true because they were afraid he was going to retaliate for the murder of his father. Um, but my question to you is, do you think they depicted Bruno correctly in that movie, in your opinion?
You know, that's a tough one, again, because I didn't really know him. And I want to make that clear. But you raised some great points. Donnie Brasco, fantastic movie, but people need to know, as you know, that did not happen in a basement. It happened in a club. It was a
Right.
walk-in job. It was a Gambino club. And it was, hey, we're here to settle our differences with all the capos. And that's the premise that those guys went to that meeting for, is to settle differences. And that's exactly what didn't happen. They walked in the door. Now I don't know if I had heard that Lucky Phil was in the meeting too, and that he was involved in the killing. I don't know. I know Vitali was. Sal Vitale definitely was. But I heard
Yes.
Lucky Phil was in there too. But yeah, the word out there was that Bruno definitely had a drug habit, as is tragic, but that was out there. We heard that then. And without a doubt, Sonny Red was the banana contact on the Galante hit. And his team definitely was his brother JB, his son, and Phil, and probably a few other surveillance people that nobody will ever realize who they are. So I do believe Bruno Indelicato was probably guilty of conspiring to kill Galante, but 100% for sure he did not do it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I believe because reference to killing Galante, and then later they wanted to take over the family altogether. Those three captains, Phil, Sonny Red, and I can't remember the
Big
Sonny.
Trin. Yeah, it was Big Trin was the other one.
Yeah. So they were willing. They were looking to take over the family in general. That's why they wanted to take out Lefty and Sonny Black on all them. So they wanted to really, because Rusty was in jail and that whole storyline. And Galante was still in power at that time. So yeah, very interesting twist and everything, basically. Now, getting to where you discussed about you and your guys were involved in fireworks. Oh yeah, by the way, before I even go there, when you mentioned about where the three captains were killed, they were killed in Sammy Gravano's place. It was Sammy Gravano's club in the basement.
Yeah.
And John Gotti's crew came to clean them. They were the guys that chopped the bodies up, not the Bonanno guys.
100%. Yep. They dumped them in that wonderful fountain. You call it.
Fountain Avenue.
Yep. The nickname was, I think, Fountain Valley. The Valley of Death over there, border of Brooklyn and Queens, East New York. Real lovely neighborhood.
Yeah, they did a great job of it too, no less.
Yeah, their bodies were found. Yeah.
Yeah, the hand was sticking out of the ground.
Hard to believe.
That was Sonny Black's hand, I think. No, not Sonny Black. I mean, I'm sorry. I think it was Phil Lucky, one of them. One of them.
Yeah, one of them. That's for sure.
Nevertheless, because I know when it comes to the fireworks thing, I know the Gambinos are very much involved in running a lot of the fireworks that were being sold on the street. I know from my own experience. The reason why I'm saying
Absolutely.
that, me and my guys, bunch of Greek guys and Italian guys, we used to go to Little Italy and buy fireworks, and we bought a bunch of them, and then not realizing who we bought it from, and then we started selling them ourselves, still in Little Italy. We were trying to sell it to some other punks, not realizing whose fireworks we're trying to sell, and then we got in trouble. We got a little bit of trouble. One guy came over to us. What are you guys doing? Nothing. What do you want? You want fireworks? You want bottle rockets? What do you want? The guy looked at us. He goes, "You ain't selling on the street anymore. Whatever you bought, get the hell out of here. Go somewhere else." I said, "Oh." We pulled it out pretty quick. It was pretty funny. But I know it was the Gambino guys that ran it. Now, is that who you guys were buying and selling from?
100%. I'll give you the fireworks chain. Couldn't be any more interesting. The Chinese gangster, Uncle Seven, as we called him, Benny Young, he was responsible for importing them all from China. The Italians had nothing to do with that. However, once it hit the ports, and I think they used multiple ports from what we were told, Newark and also Brooklyn Navy Yard, wherever that stuff hit, then the Gambinos had a big slice of it. Now, here's the interesting point of how it worked. All the major fireworks, and I'm told because two of my friends still do it to this day, they make a fortune doing it. One guy does Long Island, the other guy does Connecticut. The major orders have to be in. It's technically November 1st, but they call it the Halloween deadline. So if you put in a major order for fireworks through the Chinese connection, you've got to have it in by October 31st. Now, major means multiple tractor trailer loads. So John Gotti was involved in that. He had to put the orders in. We had asked him after our first couple of weeks of doing it. I'll digress just so people get the picture. There was a feud in our town in Syosset. Guys were fighting with each other over nonsense. Young, like you said, teenage punks, no other way to put it. And guys like our friends were carrying guns. Baseball coaches found out, called them in, said, listen, you guys can kill each other if you like, that's fine, but nobody's carrying a weapon. Took all the weapons away. Then they said, instead of killing each other, why don't you sell fireworks? Linked it up like that. There was about 2 weeks before the 4th of July, sold out what they had, which was, a couple of pallets. However, I knew fireworks and I knew the price list. And I told all those guys, there is a freaking fortune in here for the prices. So myself and Tommy, we asked them, can we sell this stuff at the same price next year? They came back and said, yes. And they said, if you get a big order, you got to get in by Halloween. We got 2 tractor trailer loads, huge amount for back then. $85,000 worth for young punk kids. They couldn't believe it. So at that point, John Gotti was brought in. And John Gotti wanted to see if we were idiots or what we had. When you realized we had guys that were 6 and 7 years older than us, older brothers, Bubbles for one, that are well-known tough guys that carry that nobody's going to mess with, they realized they didn't have much of a risk fronting us the 2 tractor trailers. Now, after that, as the years went by, John saw how we were making a ton of money with this. He gave us his own friends' clubs, specifically Long Beach, Bayville, Massapequa, Oceanside, and 2 of those were run by his, at the time, best friend, Angelo Ruggiero. So our friend Tommy realized, we don't want to cut into people. We don't want to end up dead. And they asked John, could we give these guys money for you taking their places? He said, no, you keep it all. But then it worked it out, and John says, give them what you want. So our friend Tommy, who the main character is in our book, Made on Long Island, he's the main character. The oldest went through him. He gave those guys more money, and specifically Angelo Ruggiero, for not working than they made working the place. John Gotti was furious because the fireworks places he would send people to, example, Long Beach and Oceanside, they'd be closed on July 2nd and 3rd. I mean, what kind of a business is that? Because those guys were making so much money they didn't care. Our guys were the opposite. We kept it open all times, and we let the bars in the area know 4 o'clock in the morning comes around, bars close. We're open to sell fireworks. And we even brought some to certain bars and clubs and sold them out of station wagons and cars. So John saw that we were out there to make a ton of money on fireworks, and he rewarded us by giving us extra stops.
Wow. Okay. Well, you say when you're talking about John, I mean, I don't know. Did you meet him? Did you guys deal with him personally?
Yes. The guy in the book, Tommy, dealt with him personally a lot. Now, the first meeting that took place when we got the 2 orders, I was there. I was there for the meeting, and I was freaking shocked what happened. We detailed it in the book. Our friend's mother was not supposed to be there. The dad was a cop, and he was at work, so he was not there. The mother came in and blew her cork when she saw all the samples. I mean, Angela was one of the guys bringing them in with my friends, samples of everything, cones, Roman candles, flashing thunder, silver jets, everything to show us what the case price looks like, what the packs look like, how the pallets come, giving us all the specifications. So the lady blew her cork, and what kind of maniacs are these guys? Screaming at my friend like she was a maniac too. This boy's a criminal. Who are these criminals in the house? Because she had guys in the house. John was probably, I'm guessing, 32, 34 at the time. He was an unknown. Nobody knew who he was. And she sees guys with beautiful clothes hanging out with kids that are 16, 17, 15. And she's like, what the hell? But then when I explained to her, there's money in this. It's not for having fun shooting fireworks like we always did. This is money. She bought in. And that was the hardest John ever left. He went outside the house afterwards, walked 2 or 3 doors down, and lost his shit laughing. Now, Angelo and other people there, like Tommy's Uncle Tom and other people that were in that house, they couldn't stay in the house. They had to go outside and laugh. Out of respect, they didn't want to laugh in this lady's face. John held it in. We don't know how, but he did. And when he left, he lost it. Very, very funny shit.
That is funny. Well, so
You know,
how much?
I'm gonna just build on one thing that just came to my mind, which is a really important thing too. One of the things this lady said, and by the way, she was Jewish. One of our friends was Jewish. Everyone else in the house was Christian. And she screams when she saw how much money she could make. She screamed at us all. She goes, "If the goy," which is a word for non-Jew, "will buy these devices, then sell them to the goy, we will." And that's what she said. And when she said that, we lost our freaking shit. Nobody could talk. And I'm telling you this for a reason. I had gone to college and left that whole scene. Came back working as a broker and other stuff. Complete coincidence. A girl came in for a job. Nice girl. I was in charge of hiring her, and I hired her. Got to know her. Her father, whose street nickname, maybe you've heard of him, Frankie, Pennsylvania. He was best friends with John. They went to Frankie Lane together, and he knew John inside and out. So I want you to give a timetable here. I left and went to college roughly about 81. Didn't really have much to do with those guys. Maybe 1990, let's call it. Rough age, 1990, back in. Now, her father, she had told me her father was, best friends with John. I was like, holy shit, I know the name. I met her father. And I told him I had met him years before. And he got mad at me when I told him that. He goes, "Oh, everybody out there says they know John Gotti. They've met him and stuff. This is bad shit. I see him all the time. If I find out you're saying something that's not true, you're going to be in some hot water. And you're going to be banned from hanging out with my daughter." I said, "I tell you what." And I wrote down on a piece of paper in his house in Belmar, and I wrote down exactly what I just told you. I wrote, "If the goy will buy these devices, then sell them to the goy, we will." I said to Frankie, "You give this to John and you see his reaction. Don't tell him it's from me." John saw it, lost his shit, told Frankie, "Bring this guy to me." And I went to meet him then. Again, that's probably 90, 91. Had a nice little go around with him again, because again, when I saw him back then, what was I? I was a young punk. Really, really young. And he remembered the line, and he laughed his ass. He goes, no, Frankie, these are the fireworks guys from Long Island. Absolutely hilarious.
Wow, look at that.
That's you brought that out of me. I didn't even put that part in the book. You reminded me that's how, and I could understand it, because when we met John Gotti, nobody knew who he was. Same as meeting John Smith. Nobody knew him. But then when the years went by, you're talking about 12, 14 years under the bridge, notoriety, and everyone, John Gotti this, John Gotti that. This is after the Castellano hit. His face is everywhere. People would always say, I know him. And that's when the father was a little bit pissed off at me. He thought I was just, bullshitting around. I gave him that note. He gave it to John, and it was absolutely hilarious.
Wow, yeah, it is. Well, based on the book of the moment and how you put it together, how long did it take you to gather all this information and complete the project?
Brother, I'm going to tell you, so many years. I'm going to give you a rough estimate here. The first guy died, I believe, in 2018. We filed a copyright on most of the information back in 2021. We still weren't done, but we wanted protection on this stuff. And add to it, then the other guy, Bubbles, had passed away a couple years after that with pretty much the same information, maybe some extra stuff thrown in. And then we said, we have to just organize this and put it together. That's where Bart came in. Bart organized the crap out of this, chronological, asking me questions, asking me to clarify stuff. You got to say, the book that's in your hands, it had to take at least, good gosh, 7 years to get done at least. Maybe even closer to 8 or 9, that long. 2018. Yeah. Long
But
time.
it is a lot of it. So most of your information is, so to speak, well, I guess firsthand, I guess you could say,
What,
people that were involved, which is obviously pretty, when you get it firsthand, it's pretty accurate. Um, the Based on this, because this story is real and actually happened, and all this information is, you know, it's not fantasy, it's what happened. Um, I mean, some people may question it. Some people say, well, we never heard of these guys. We never heard of this. This was never revealed. It was never, so many years have gone by. Nobody said anything about this. How is this guy, Matt, know all this information? Why would it come out now? Blah, blah, blah. People are going to do that. People are going to come back with, how does he know this? How does he know that? How is it possible? Blah, those kind of things. Why did he wait so many years? That's going to obviously happen. You know, um, how would you be able to counter that?
Well, I would just really counter it with the truth. And I want to again make it clear I was not involved in planning any of this. I wasn't there when it happened. I did not know that this happened. I knew that stuff that I saw happen, the fireworks stealings, an incident we had at the racetrack, which is really detailed inside the book Made in Long Island, wild incident there. I was there for that. I was there for the fishing trip, which really the fishing trip, one of 50, but the main fishing trip was held on July 12th, and I can detail that for you. I was there for those things. I did not know that my friends, and again, most of these guys were significantly older than me. I had no idea that these guys did this work until my friend was, knowing he's pretty much getting ready to check out. And unfortunately, he did a short time later. That was the first time I ever knew that they did that. So it's still going to remain buried with me, except Bart had got me thinking. And then when the other guy, Bubbles, came forward, not knowing that the other guy told me most, if not everything, and he repeated the same story, both to Bart and I, on his deathbed, and he passed away, and he said he wanted his name out there. I said, we're going to put these guys' names out there. Nobody else can get hurt. Now, had I theoretically known about this, of course I'm not going to say anything, because there's guys that, are alive and running around and running businesses. Why would you do that? But when the last guy, Bubbles, checked out, there's only one other guy involved, and he's doing life without the possibility of parole, and that's Baldo. That's the only other guy from different cases. So that accounts for the reason why we did this. Knew nothing about it until our other friend passed.
So, okay, so if I understand correctly, and for the people that are listening, you were basically approached on working on this project from one of the guys that were, dying, so to speak. So they wanted to expose the story once and for all. And they did it. I'm assuming they did it because they knew they were going to, pass away. That there's not going to be any threat to them because, they're going to die. So they're not going to be they're not going to worry about anything happening to them, Bubbles included. So I guess they felt like they wanted to set the record straight before they passed. And that's how you kind of came into the picture. This is what I'm gathering.
Did that what you're saying is correct, but I got to tell you, there's something else you brought up, which is a really good point. The guy Tommy told me he was sick to his stomach when Bruno got charged with this, like literally 6 or 7 years after it happened. And he told me, and so did Bubbles at the end, when Bubbles' end was near, they were both sick to their stomach that this guy went to jail for something he didn't do. But what you're saying is correct.
Oh, okay. That makes kind of a lot of sense. All right. Well, right now, since this book has been out for a very short time, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Okay. Since the book has come out, have you received any kind of feedback, thoughts, maybe some pushback on it? How's the response been, whether good or bad?
That is another great question. I'm going to tell you the two major feedbacks I got that I did not know about that I put in the book. That has to do with New York State cops at the very same time that were falsifying fingerprints records in major cases, including homicides. I knew nothing of this. It was on another podcast, the guy you're friends with, great guy. This person contacted me and said, listen, there's one piece that you should have put in your book, and I knew nothing about it. And I know the names now because after they told me this, I did research it. These are all New York State cops assigned to Fingerprint Squad. David Harding, Robert Lashansky, a lieutenant named Craig Harvey. Every one of these guys and more, another guy, Ed Pius, I believe his name was, something like that. These guys, every one of them, were convicted or pled guilty of falsifying fingerprints records from the very thing that happened here. That getaway car was found in 1979. Another feedback that I got was when that car was gotten, every single fingerprint agency involved would have gone over every stitch of it. This was a crime scene lady. She said you have the FBI, NYPD. She also said New York State Police, huge fingerprint unit. And another one, which you wouldn't really think, would be ATF. She said they had fantastic fingerprints units. And she said, you have a car who's used in a quadruple shooting and a triple homicide of a high-profile guy like this. She said they would have gone as far as to take the lug nuts off the car, taking the battery out, seeing if there's any fingerprints. Maybe the guy had to change a battery one time, maybe something on the cable. She said there's nothing that wouldn't have been overturned in that car. And yet in 79, the FBI and the other agencies don't find fingerprints. And then magically, before the next case comes up, the commission case, they find those prints 6 years later at the same exact time that the New York State guys were falsifying fingerprints, even on things like homicides. They were doing exactly that. They were putting prints in getaway cars, prints on a gun. One guy went to jail for murder. He didn't even know the guy that they said he killed. He was exonerated. He was let out. So you have that over there. There's no shot that if Bruno Indelicato's prints were in that car in 79, they would have been found in 79. And the other main shot here is that nobody in organized crime Cosa Nostra is going to do a hit of any kind, and their planning stage is going to call for them to leave a getaway car out in the middle of the street in broad daylight. That is not reality, people. And that's why initially Cosa Nostra people and law enforcement knew right away that Sonny Red, all of them, Bruno, JB, Phil Lucky, had nothing to do with the crime. Number one, they're not going to leave a getaway car out in the open. And number two, they're sure as hell not going to go and celebrate in front of Neil's Ravenite Club in Lower Manhattan. And by the way, the feds presented that basic film as basically a celebration. Please have your listeners watch it over and over again. You'll see it. It is not a celebration. It's anger. Sonny Red is registering a beef with his own consigliere, Stefano Canone, because he felt John Gotti did the hit without him. But there were some other ones that came back as great, great feedback that we didn't know about. And really, listeners like yours really give us stuff that we didn't know, and we really appreciate that.
Well, based on what you just said, these cops, falsifying fingerprints. I mean, we're talking about 1979 now. And in the 70s, in the early 80s too, there was a lot of corrupt cops. We could mention the mafia cops that we talked about, Stephen Caracappa, Louis Ippolito. There were so many different guys, unfortunately, that played two sides of the fence. So it is, to me, really of no surprise that, first of all, Carmine Galante was not a well-liked mobster, not just by the wise guys, but even the cops. Nobody really liked him. He was abrasive, arrogant, rude. He wasn't a classy guy. He was not like Carlo Gambino. He knew when to act appropriately. He wanted to whack Carlo Gambino, basically. He wanted to be the boss of bosses. So I think the cops were in on it. And like you just said, they wanted to cover whatever they can up as much as possible to get Galante out of the way. That's what I believe. And the mere fact that he was running a heroin racket to begin with. So I think that was a lot. The mob guys were, I guess, involved with the people that orchestrated the hit, knew who to pay off. They knew which cops to go to to cover things up. That's what I believe, because in that time, during that time frame, 70s to the early 80s, there was a lot of that corruption going on.
Yeah, I agree. And, to answer your question again with another point about feedback we got, fantastic feedback. One person brought up an angle, and this was on a book review on Amazon about our book, which was a great angle. Their point was, if you're going to fabricate solving a homicide, pick an unsolved one. Pick Joe Colombo. No one in the right mind is going to fabricate solving a homicide when you already have a guy convicted of it. Why would you do that? You have a homicide that to 99.9% of the population is an open and shut case. Bruno Indelicato has been convicted. End of story. And the person's point that wrote the feedback on Amazon book review was, of course you're not going to try to fabricate solving a homicide that's already been solved. And they went on to say these guys stood with the story because they know their friends are the ones that did it. And I thought that was a really good observation.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty interesting point. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of those. you know.
Yeah, good observations from people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for people to understand, the Bonanno family in general at that time was in totally upheaval. It was totally like there was a lot of faction within a faction, as we just said about the three captains, Sonny Black's crew against Sonny Red's crew, Rusty, and the issue with Galante and Messino. It was a total disaster. Bonanno's family was always going through something. Not until Joe Messino took over and kind of calmed the waters and took control until he flipped a boss later on, ironically enough. But and Sal Vitale, his own brother-in-law, ratted on him, and Sal Vitale was actually involved in the Galante hit. So it's a little bit of contradiction going on with these wise guys. But for people to understand the history of how this whole thing unfolded, and I think you would probably agree, Galante was a very powerful guy and had a lot of Sicilian. Baldo and Cesare, as we say, were Sicilian, and Galante liked to have a lot of Sicilians that he brought over to America to fill up his ranks, because Sicilians, like you said, had no fear. They didn't care about anything. Nothing bothered them. They usually, most of the time, these guys bring Sicilians over because they're unknowns to the authorities. They don't know who these guys are. They have no record of them, nothing. They usually come here, whack somebody, and go right back to Sicily. So Galante surrounded himself with a lot of these guys, and a lot of the American wise guys didn't like that, because they figured why these guys, they're flexing everywhere, and we don't like this kind of thing. So I think that was another factor involved, that Galante wanted to change the face of the mob in general, of the Cosa Nostra. And I think a lot of them didn't like that. And I think it's one of the other reasons why the authorities themselves were actually, yeah, let's get rid of this guy. We'll help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's another bridge. You brought up another very, very critical point here, the Joe Messino point. Critical point. We don't have to guess. We know he was hands-on. We know from his own admission, he was there when the three capos got hit. He wanted to know every detail. He wanted to take part. He was 100% hands-on, which he shouldn't have been, but he was. Now, if he's hands-on in the three capo murder, and he admitted when he flipped that he took messages about getting Galante killed from jail to the commission, from Rusty, who was in jail. That's fact. Here is a critical point that's where you really bring out and made in Long Island, but we maybe should have brought it out more. When Joe Messina flipped, he told them everything, and I'll give you facts. He told them about a murder in 1969 that he did. Cops didn't even know one freaking thing about it. He told them again about another murder, 1975. Guy got killed named Vito Borelli. They had no idea who did it. So when Messino flipped, he tells them about those murders. He said with the Vito Borelli hit, him and John Gotti being the trigger man, did the work. So as you know, when you flip, you've got to tell everything. You leave one thing out, you're out of the program, as Gaspipe found out. However, what did he tell the feds about the Galante hit? Nothing. The reason why is because he didn't know anything. If he's going back to 1969 to talk about a murder he committed, going back to 75 to a murder him and John committed, admitting he's present at the three capitals thing, of course he's going to have either firsthand or secondhand information about the Galante hit if the Bananos did it. It's just more proof the Bananos were furious that it got done because they knew nothing about it. And obviously, Joe Messina would have known everything about it at that time. He would have demanded, tell me what you have. And the only thing Sonny Red could go back and tell him is, we have nothing. The only thing we know is that Galante's dead, and we think John Gotti did it. We raced over to Neil's Ravenite Club to put in the beef. And if you watch that video, that is not a celebration. Sonny Red goes for his glasses, pulls him down a couple of times. Any behavioral specialist guy will tell you it's not a celebration. He's furious. And obviously, a celebration doesn't take place in someone's front of their house for a whole 90 seconds and then you leave. That's not a celebration. It's a beef being put in. They're furious.
Well, I got to make another point, too, that Joe Messina and John Gotti were good friends. They did a lot of work with JFK. So that being the case is when the three captains got whacked while they used Sammy Gravano's place. And John Gotti's crew came and chopped up the bodies. So, Gotti and Joe did a lot of work together. They were good friends. So it's no surprise that they went and made a beef with John Gotti, that he might have been involved in some way with the Galante hit. So obviously you can see the connection here. No, it's an interesting point.
No question. Though that hit was supposed to be done with Sonny Red leading the Bonanno crew, John Gotti leading the Gambino crew, and Messina supervising everything and going back to the commission and to Rusty. And now Messina's end got cut off. If Messina knew one thing about the hit, he asked to tell the feds. And when they asked him about it, he said, I don't know anything about it. I have nothing to tell you. I don't know. He didn't know because he really didn't know. I mean, to go back to 75 and finger John Gotti and himself for murder on this Vito Borelli guy, that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Well, Matt, I really thank you a lot again for being on the show. And we covered a lot of areas, that's for sure. And I want, again, for people to know the title of the book, where to find it, so they can get their hands on it. I know you did. You were nice enough to send me one. I didn't get it yet, but that's okay.
No.
Yeah, eventually it'll come.
That's crazy. I'll get on that tomorrow. I'm going to throw another thing to you, a surprise. I like surprises. We talked about so much because there's so much to talk about. There's one more fascinating thing, and I'll leave it up to you and Peter if you guys want to do this. Mm-hmm. I can give you all the mechanics on the exact hit. What car was where, who did what, how they moved, how the cops held the parking spaces. If we want to even do a part 3, let me know, because it's fascinating what happened here. There was an alibi used on a boat on Long Island. Everybody went out on a fishing trip. There's so much material here. Again, it is in the book Made on Long Island, but I don't mind just giving it out to the people because the information is probably more shocking than the 2 parts we already did.
Most likely. Okay, that's a good point. It's a good thing to think about. I just don't want to give too much away because I want people to read the book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything.
No problem. I thank you, Matt, and it's a pleasure having you on the show, even though I can't see you. But nevertheless, it's all good. It puts a little mystery to the whole concept. So, Matt, again, thank you, and me and Pete will discuss hopefully a part 3.
Absolutely, yeah, we got a lot of material. Thank you, and thank Pete.
No problem. Thank you, brother.